A wealthy banker saw a black woman in a blue tracksuit sitting in the $50,000 Apex penthouse suite and decided she didn't belong. Preston Sterling and head steward Brenda Miller conspired to humiliate her forcibly, removing her to the worst cabin on the ship, a windowless box near the engine room. They laughed as she walked away. But the nobody they just destroyed? Dr. Alina Ramsey, CEO of the company that owns 49% of the cruise line. One email from the middle of the ocean changed everything. They tried to send her to the back. She bought the entire ship. This is Voyage AVL 101, the Azure Alliance. VIP lounge at the Port of Miami terminal was like an ocean of processed silence. The sound of porcelain hitting the saucer, the whisper of a newspaper page turning, the distant muffled hiss of the espresso machine. It was all a carefully curated soundtrack designed to soothe the egos of the 1%. The air smelled of expensive, slightly burnt coffee and a faint citrus-based cleaning solution. Dr. Alina Ramsey sat in a high-backed leather armchair, one leg crossed over the other, observing the surroundings. She was like a ghost in this environment, not because she did not belong here, but because she refused to participate in that open peacocking display that defined places like this. Her attire was the epitome of stealth wealth. She wore no logos, no screaming Gucci or Vuitton. Instead, she was draped in a simple, bright blue cashmere tracksuit from Loro Piana, a garment that cost more than the monthly salary of the waiter polishing glasses behind the marble bar. Her only jewelry was a simple, elegant Cartier tank watch on her left wrist and modest diamond studs in her ears. Her hair was pulled back into a sleek, efficient bun. Beside her on the floor sat a dark brown, soft leather weekender bag from the row. To an untrained eye, she was just a well-dressed but ultimately ordinary black woman. But to a trained eye, an eye that understood fabrics and craftsmanship, she was undisputedly and terrifyingly wealthy. Unfortunately, the lounge was filled with the untrained. Elle was 42 years old and the founder, chief executive officer, and sole managing partner of Ramsey Horizon Ventures, a private equity firm so large and so quiet that it was often referred to as the shadow bank. She specialized in acquiring legacy industries, shipping, textiles, and recently aviation and maritime, and revitalizing them with brutal technological efficiency. Her latest acquisition, made through a complex series of shell corporations, was a 49% stake in transatlantic voyages, the cruise line she was about to travel with. She was traveling to Southampton to finalize the Atlas project, the complete absorption of a smaller competing European cruise line. This was a hostile takeover she had been planning for 18 months. To put it mildly, this was the biggest deal of her life, a deal that would solidify her as one of the most powerful but invisible chief executive officers in the world. A red-faced and loud man across the atrium was yelling into his phone about a $50 million tranche, and how his guys at Morgan Stanley were going to crush it. Alina sighed. New money, she thought, always screams the loudest. She looked at her watch. 7:30 in the evening. Her ship, voyage number AVL 101, would start boarding soon. She had a reservation right at the front in the Apex penthouse suite on deck 15, specifically stateroom 1A. This suite was hers not just by reservation, but by ownership. She had helped design the damned thing, from the thread count of the sheets to the brand of the champagne. Krug champagne had been chosen, not the flashier Dom Perignon she valued this time before departure. It was the last moment of stillness before the controlled chaos of the voyage and the corporate warfare awaiting her in Southampton. She closed her eyes not to sleep, but to visualize the boardroom, to review the numbers, the arguments, and the weak points of the opposing board. She visualized victory. Boarding is now beginning for our Azure Ocean Lines voyage number 101 to Southampton. We are starting with our Apex penthouse and suite guests at Terminal Gate 12. The automated voice, with its smooth and impersonal tone, broke her concentration. Alina stood up, picked up her bag, and walked silently toward the gate, using the unmarked VIP lane that scanned her boarding pass with a quiet beep. She bypassed the crowd of passengers that had already formed, She walked down the sterile tunnel of the gangway, the industrial carpet muffling her footsteps. She was the first passenger to board the ship. "Welcome aboard, Dr. Ramsey." A young ship attendant greeted her with a nervous but sincere smile. His name tag read Ethan. "Right this way, please." "May I take your bag?" "Thank you, Ethan. It will stay with me," she replied, her voice low and warm. She turned left to enter the exclusive suite corridor. Stateroom 1A was magnificent. It was less of a stateroom and more of a small apartment. A high-ceilinged private cocoon containing a reclining armchair, a separate guest seating area, a minibar filled with mineral water and fruit juices, and a large 80-inch monitor. The amenity kit, a small leather bag by Joe Malone, stood neatly on the polished wooden console. Alina slid into the seat, the plush velvet cushions sighing under her. She placed her bag under the ottoman and took out a simple leather-bound notebook and a pen. Ethan appeared a moment later. "Would you like a pre-departure beverage, Dr. Ramsey? We have 2004 Krug champagne. Or perhaps just mineral water with a slice of lime?" "Please, Ethan." "Thank you. Of course." He returned minutes later and placed the drink on a linen coaster. "We will be departing from the port in about 45 minutes. Please let me know if you need anything at all." Alina gave him a small, appreciative smile. That, she thought, is good service. Unobtrusive, polite, respectful. She took a sip of her water and opened her notebook, starting to jot down final thoughts for the merger. The corridor began to fill up. The clattering of rolling suitcases, loud conversations, and the voices of fussy children filtered in from the main corridor in the distance. Here in the Apex suite, there was peace. She heard the voice of the head of guest services, a woman with a sharp, clipped voice, welcoming other passengers in the suite section behind her. "Mr. Sullivan, it is so good to see you again. Right this way. To be is a wonderful suite. Senator, welcome." "As usual, sir." Alina paid no mind. She was already deep in her work. The ship was her office, her sanctuary. However, today, that sanctuary was about to be violated, as the boarding process was reaching its conclusion. A disturbance rippled through the quiet, sweet corridor. A loud and arrogant voice broke the calm. "What do you mean? Is my suite occupied? I am in 1A, the Apex penthouse. I paid for that suite." Alina looked up from her notes, her eyebrows furrowing slightly. Standing in the corridor, waving his arms wildly, was the same red-faced man from the lounge. He was a large man, sweating slightly inside a tight, expensive-looking Zegna suit. He was holding his cruise card in one hand and his phone, into which he was inexplicably still speaking, in the other. "I do not care. Just buy the shares. I will call you from the car when we arrive in Southampton. I need to handle this." He barked into the device and shoved it into his pocket. His eyes landed on Alina. He did not see a chief executive officer. He did not see the Conor of the cruise line. He saw a black woman in a tracksuit sitting in his suite. His face, already red, darkened with a specific kind of privileged rage. He did not speak to Alina. He bellowed over her toward the corridor. "Manager, come here. There is someone in my suite." A woman in a sharp navy blue uniform, her blonde hair pulled back in a severe bun, stepped forward hurriedly. Her name tag read Brenda Miller, and her face was a mask of stressful efficiency. She was the head of guest services, the rule maker of this floating metal pile. "Sir, please calm down. What is the problem? ... She stopped when she saw the man. Her expression instantly transformed from annoyance to a damned practical respect. "Oh, Mr. Sterling. Mr. Preston Sterling, it is so wonderful to see you on our ship again." Preston Sterling of Sterling Capital was a minor celebrity in the financial world, known more for his activist investing than for his actual success. However, he was an AOL Platinum Elite member, and he wielded this status like a weapon. "Brenda," he snapped, "good to see you. Now, why is this woman in my suite? I have a reservation in 1A. Brenda Miller looked at Alina. Her eyes performed a quick, dismissive scan. She examined the tracksuit, the simple hair, the woman. "K." Her professional smile turned into a thin, tense line. This was not one of her regulars. She was not a senator, a hedge fund giant, or a movie star. This, in her eyes, was a mistake. "Ma'am," Brenda said, her voice dripping with disdain, "I am afraid there has been a misunderstanding. This is Mr. Sterling's suite." Alina did not raise her voice. She simply looked at the head of guest services with a calm, level gaze. "Good evening. My boarding pass says 1A. I am Dr. Alina Ramsey." "Doctor." Sterling scoffed, a truly ugly smirk twisting on his lips. "Doctor of what?" "Basket weaving. Listen, sweetie, do not know what kind of staff ticket fraud you committed, but this is my seat. Move now." The word sweetie was like a spark. Alina felt a familiar, cold tightening in her stomach, but her expression remained neutral. "There is no fraud, Mr. Sterling," Alina said, her voice clear and cold. "I am a paying passenger. Please check your boarding pass. Perhaps you are mistaken." "Mistaken?" he roared. "I am never mistaken. Brenda, handle this. Want her removed." Brenda turned back to Alina, her face hardening. It was clear she was afraid of Sterling and prejudiced against Alina. It was a toxic combination. "Ma'am, I am going to need to see your boarding pass," Brenda demanded. Alina held up her phone. The digital pass clearly displayed Ramsey, E. Suite 1A. Brenda barely looked at it. There must be an error in the system. The passenger list clearly shows Mr. Sterling in this suite. This is the Apex penthouse, ma'am. It is reserved for our most exclusive clients. The implication was clear, and you are not one of them. "I am aware of what the suite is called," Alina said, the temperature in her voice dropping several degrees. "I am in it. This is my place. I am not moving." "This is nonsense," shouted Sterling, causing other passengers in the corridor to crane their necks. "I am going to the Atlas Project meeting in London. I cannot be delayed by this nonsense." "Brenda, are you going to let her disrespect me?" Elena's blood ran cold. The Atlas Project. Sterling was not supposed to be involved. He was a raider, a vulture. If he was trying to grab a seat at the table, it meant he was planning to disrupt her takeover. This voyage had just become infinitely more complicated. This new information changed her calculation. A public fight, a delay, security being called. All of these would feed Sterling's ego. And more importantly, it would delay her. If she missed her 9 o'clock preliminary meeting in the morning, her entire timeline could be compromised. Sterling might even be deliberately provoking her to get her thrown off the ship. Meanwhile, Brenda had made her own calculation. The known whale, Mr. Sterling, versus an unknown black woman. It was not even a contest. "Ma'am," Brenda said, her voice now sharp and devoid of false politeness. "We have a wonderful place for you in our standard cabin section. I have already arranged it. Cabin 402 to be on the lower deck." Alina looked at her. Standard interior cabin. 402 to be, a windowless, narrow box. That is an interior cabin. "It is the only one available," Brenda lied, her face a mask of indifference. "The ship is completely full. Now, if you would collect your things, we need to leave the port." "I will not move to an interior cabin," Alina said flatly. "I will sit in the suite I paid for, or rather, the suite I own." Brenda and Sterling blinked at this. "Own," Brenda sneered. "Ma'am, that is absurd. Please do not cause difficulties." "I am making it very simple," Alina said. "It's my place." Sterling stepped forward, his face inches from hers. "Look, I do not know who you think you are, but you are keeping a huge ship waiting. You are keeping me waiting. Brenda, call security. Get her thrown off this ship. Say she is causing trouble." "That is exactly what I will do," Brenda said, taking out her radio. "Ma'am, this is your final warning. Either you move to 402 to be, or you will be removed from the ship by port security, and I assure you we will press charges." This was the critical moment. Lena looked at Sterling's smug, triumphant face. She looked at Brenda's cold, dismissive glare. And she looked at the young ship attendant Ethan, standing by the door, his face pale with horror, wringing his hands. He knew this was wrong, but he was a child in this power play. Alina made her decision. The battle was not here. The battle was in Southampton. To win this argument meant losing the war. A delay, an arrest, even if unjust, would be catastrophic for the Atlas Project. She would accept the humiliation. She would swallow the rage and turn it into fuel. Slowly, deliberately, Dr. Elena Ramsey stood up. She picked up her leather-bound notebook and her pen. She looked Brenda Miller in the eye. "What is your full name?" she asked. The manager was surprised. "What? Your full name, Brenda?" "Brenda Miller." Alina's gaze shifted to the man who started it all. "And you are Preston Sterling of Sterling Capital." Sterling puffed up. "Exactly. And do not forget it." "Oh, I will not," Alina said, her voice like a low, dangerous promise. "I will not forget a single second of this." She turned to the pale-faced young attendant. "And you, young man? Ethan, ma'am?" "Ethan Cole." "Thank you, Mr. Cole," she said with a nod. Without another word, Alina Ramsey picked up her bag worth thousands of dollars. She walked out of the Apex penthouse suite, passed through the luxury corridor, and pushed through the door separating the classes. She passed the suites, the balcony rooms, took the elevator down, and entered the cramped, chaotic corridor on the lowest passenger deck of the ship. She found 402 to be. It was a windowless, tiny interior cabin near the engine room. When she stepped inside, she heard how the snoring of the man in the adjacent cabin echoed through the thin walls. She closed the door. A moment later, a faint, triumphant laugh echoed from the upper deck from very far away. That was Preston Sterling celebrating his victory. The ship cast off its lines. The engines moaned. Alina Ramsey sat in the dark on the edge of the bed, her notebook in her lap, and began to write. The humiliation of cabin 402 to be was like a physical assault. The cabin was a claustrophobic box. The walls were paper-thin. Privacy was a battlefield. The man in the cabin to the right had fallen asleep before the voyage even fully began, snoring like a dying engine, and his sound vibrated the walls. The woman in the cabin to the left was typing furiously on her keyboard. The click-click-click sound of the keys created a maddening counter-rhythm to the hum of the ship's engine. The bed was a masterpiece of cruel engineering, designed to inflict maximum discomfort to yield maximum profit. Alina, who was 5'10", struggled to fit in the room. The air was stale, smelling of diesel fuel and humidity. Anyone else would have been raging. Anyone else would have wept. Anyone else would have called the reception and demanded at least a refund. Alina Ramsey did none of these things. Her anger was not a hot, explosive thing. It was a cold, dense, heavy element like uranium. It was patient, and it was fissionable. She was being tested. The universe, in its infinite, cruel wisdom, was testing her resolve before the biggest fight of her career. She had faced this all her life. The college counselor who told her finance was not for girls like her. The bankers who refused her first seed loan, only to watch her build an empire without them. The old boys club board members who mistook her quiet observation for weakness. Right before she liquidated their assets and fired them in the middle of the ocean. This humiliation was just another data point. This was fuel. The ship reached the open sea. Alina took her 14-inch MacBook Pro out of her bag. Alina paid for the exorbitantly priced ship Wi-Fi service. The connection was slow, agonizingly slow, but it was stable. She opened her encrypted email client and began to build her case. Her first email was to her personal legal team at Ramsey Horizon. Subject: Incident Report AOL 101. MIASOU, the 20th of October 2025. Body: Team. I am currently on voyage AOL 101 to London. I am not in my reserved 1A Apex penthouse suite. I was forcibly removed from my suite by Head of Guest Services Brenda Miller to accommodate another passenger. Preston Sterling of Sterling Capital. The incident was explicitly based on racial and class bias. Mr. Sterling addressed me as Sweetie and accused me of staff ticket fraud. Manager Miller supported his claim, called my ticket an error, and threatened to have me removed from the ship by port security if I did not move to standard interior cabin 402 to B, where I am currently located upon my arrival. I require the following. 1. A full background dossier on Brenda Miller, employment history, performance reviews, and previous complaints of a similar nature. 2. A full background dossier on Preston Sterling, specifically his connection to the Atlas Project. I have reasons to believe he is attempting to interfere with the acquisition. Find out who he is meeting in London. 3. A prepared lawsuit. Draft complaints against both Brenda Miller and Preston Sterling for racial discrimination, defamation, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. For a full passenger list for AOL 101, I will handle the internal corporate response. I will handle Mr. Sterling's business interests. You will handle the legal framework for their dismantling. This is red level priority. She hit send. The small whoosh sound was supremely satisfying. Her second email was to the only person in the world who was her equal on paper at the cruise line. Alistair from Azure Holdings UK. Subject, urgent and confidential. AOL 101, shareholder incident. Body, Alistair. There is a development. I am currently traveling on voyage AOL 101. In cabin 402 to B, I was thrown out of my suite 1A by the manager, Brenda Miller, at the behest of another passenger, Preston Sterling. The encounter was unpleasant and overtly racist. It appears Mr. Sterling is also on his way to disrupt the Atlas deal. I am exercising my full shareholder privilege. I want an emergency meeting at the Southampton headquarters. I want the entire AOL board of directors to be there. I want Chief Executive Officer Richard Hall. I want Head of Services Amanda Brooks. And I want the Head of Corporate Security. Also. I want you to detain Preston Sterling upon landing. Use whatever excuse you deem necessary. A customs flag, a security alert. I do not care. I want him brought to that meeting. And Alistair, find out where Brenda Miller is. I want her and her entire team at that meeting as well. This is no longer just about the merger. It is about the culture of the company we own, and I will tear it down to its foundations. See you at 7, Alina. She sent that too. 2 pillars of the trap were set. Now she needed a witness for the third. She composed a third email, her fingers flying. She had to guess the corporate email format. But she was confident. 2. Ethan.cole@azurecruises.com. Subject: Formal report request AOL 101 incident. Confidential body, Mr. Cole. You witnessed the interaction between myself, Mr. Sterling, and Manager Miller at the door of 1A this evening. My name is Dr. Alina Ramsey. I am a senior executive at the parent holding company of Azure Ocean Lines. What you witnessed was a serious violation of company policy and federal anti-discrimination law. I am formally requesting your written report regarding the incident. You need to detail every word spoken by all parties to the best of your recollection. I need your professional assessment of the situation. Mr. Cole, I am well aware of the difficult situation you are in. Your manager created a hostile environment for passengers, and I suspect, for her crew. Your honest and detailed statement regarding this incident will be received directly by me and the board of directors. Your integrity will be noted, and I assure you it will be rewarded. Please complete this report before the ship arrives at the port and email it directly to me. Do not discuss this with Ms. Miller or any other crew member. Your future at this company depends on your honesty. Dr. Alina Ramsey, Ramsey Horizon Ventures. She hit send. For the rest of the voyage, Alina hardly slept. She drank the lukewarm water offered by the stewards. She ate a stale cracker and worked. She reviewed the final Atlas presentation, made notes on legal documents, and prepared for a war on 2 fronts. She felt a strange, cold clarity. Sterling and Miller had intended to humiliate her, to put her in her place. They had no idea what they had done. They had not just insulted a passenger. They had insulted the owner. And by doing so, they had given her exactly the weapon she needed. Sterling thought he was going to London to steal her deal. He did not know he was going to his own execution, in the galley behind the luxury corridor. Behind that thin door separating the penthouse suites from the rest of the world, Ethan Cole was trembling. He was 23 years old. This was his dream job, or at least the path to it. He wanted to see the world. And Azure Ocean Lines had been his ticket out of a small town in Ohio. He had been at sea for 6 months. Brenda Miller had been his supervisor on half of these voyages. He hated her. She was a tyrant in a navy blue suit. She fawned over the rich, important passengers on the forward deck while acting openly cruel to those in the back. She treated her young crew, especially Ethan, even worse. She mocked his politeness, criticized his uniform, and seemed to take sadistic pleasure in pointing out his small mistakes in front of passengers. However, what he had just witnessed was a new level of malice. He had seen Dr. Ramsay. He had served her mineral water. He had been impressed by her. She was calm. She had a quiet, powerful stillness he was not used to. She had looked him in the eye. She had addressed him by his name. In his experience, passengers in 1A rarely acknowledged the crew as human. Then Preston Sterling had arrived. A man Ethan recognized from previous voyages. Sterling was a nightmare, demanding, rude, and constantly dissatisfied. And Brenda. Brenda loved him. She fussed over him, laughed at his terrible jokes. And now she had displaced a paying passenger for him. Ethan had heard every word. "Staff ticket, sweetie. You going to let her disrespect me?" He had seen the cold, calculated racism. He had seen Brenda's lie that the interior cabin was the only option. Ethan knew for a fact that there was an empty suite with a balcony on deck 7, but Brenda had deliberately, punitively sent Dr. Ramsay to the worst place on the ship. Now Brenda was back in the galley, pouring Mr. Sterling a large glass of Krug. "I cannot believe the audacity of some people," Brenda was saying, her voice a venomous whisper, trying to sneak into the Apex suite in a bright blue tracksuit. She was probably hoping no one would notice. "You handled it wonderfully, Brenda." Sterling's voice boomed from the suite. "Absolutely wonderful." "Who is your boss?" "Richard Hall. I will send a letter to Hall himself. I will say you deserve a bonus for dealing with that, that element." "Mr. Sterling, you are so kind," Brenda chirped. "It is just about standards, you know. We must maintain the integrity of the penthouse corridor. It is not for everyone." Ethan felt his stomach churn. He busied himself wiping down a counter that was already clean. "You boy." Brenda snapped upon seeing him. "What are you doing sneaking around there?" Just cleaning, Brenda," Ethan stammered. "Well, stop sneaking around and do a water service to the lower deck. And check on our guest in 402 to be. Make sure she is not causing any trouble there." She laughed with a short, barking sound. Ethan nodded, his face burning with shame. He grabbed the water pitcher and fled through the door. He walked down the long corridor, took the elevator down. When he arrived at deck 4, he saw Dr. Ramsay. She was not causing trouble. She was not sleeping. She was working. Her laptop was open, her face illuminated by the glow of the screen. She was scrolling through what looked like complex legal documents. Her expression was intense, diamond-hard concentration. She looked up as Ethan approached. He whispered, "Dr. Ramsay, can I bring you anything? Water? A blanket? I have a spare pillow from the upper deck. I could." Alina looked at him, her eyes searching his. She saw his fear, his guilt, his honesty. "Thank you, Ethan," she said quietly, her voice just for him. "A bottle of water would be wonderful. And if it is not too much trouble, that pillow." "Right away, ma'am," he said, rushing off. He returned a minute later with the water and the pillow. As he handed them to her, he leaned in, his voice barely audible. "Dr. Ramsay, I am so sorry. What she did, what they said, it was wrong." Alina gave him a small, sad smile. "I know. And I know you know it too. Should have said something," he whispered, his voice trembling. But Brenda, she would have taken my job. I understand, Ethan, Elena said. But the night is not over. She paused. I want you to do something for me. Check your corporate email. I sent you a request. Fulfill it. Be honest. Be detailed. Your job will be protected. I promise you. Ethan's eyes widened. His corporate email. Had she sent him an email? How did she know? He nodded, filled with a new nervous energy. Yes, ma'am. I will. He retreated to the aft galley, that small, cramped space at the stern of the ship. He took out his company-issued phone and logged into his email. There it was. Formal report request, Dr. Alina Ramsey. Ramsey Horizon Ventures.ohe. Googled the company. His blood ran cold. Ramsey Horizon Ventures. A billion-dollar private equity firm specializing in transport and maritime. He Googled Dr. Alina Ramsey, the shadow chief executive officer. He clicked on an article from the Financial Times. The new face of maritime AOLs. Mysterious buyer. The article was speculative, but mentioned Ramsey Horizon as the likely firm behind the recent 49% acquisition of transatlantic voyages. Ethan put his phone down, his hands shaking so much he could barely type. He had just served water to the owner of the cruise line. And Brenda Miller had just sent her to an interior cabin on the lowest deck. Ethan opened a new document. He looked at the email from Alina again. Your future at this company depends on your honesty. He took a deep, calming breath and began to write. He wrote down staff ticket. He wrote down sweetie. He wrote the words disruptive element and fraud. He detailed how Brenda lied about the ship being full. He described Sterling's aggression and how Brenda encouraged it. He wrote for nearly an hour, his fingers flying. He documented everything. When he finished, he read it once, attached it, and sent it directly to Alina Ramsey. He felt a terrifying, liberating wave of adrenaline. He had just signed Brenda Miller's death warrant, or just as likely, his own. With his heart pounding through his chest, he returned to his station. Arrival in Southampton was hazy. The engine shuddered with reverse thrust as the ship docked. Alina Ramsey barely noticed. She had been watching the sunrise, a dull gray and pink smear over the ocean, for an hour. Her laptop was closed. Her notebook was put away. She had received Ethan Cole's report. It was meticulous, detailed, and damning, as she had hoped. There was a slight jolt as the ship tied up at the pier. The flat gray light of the Southampton morning illuminated the cabin. The announcement was the signal for the shipwide stampede. People jumped up, grabbed their bags, pushed into the corridor. Alina in 402-B was trapped. She did not rush. She sat and waited. She knew exactly what was happening at the front of the ship. In the Apex Suite corridor, Brenda Miller was beaming, personally helping Preston Sterling with his coat. Thank you again for such a wonderful voyage. Mr. Sterling, she said, her voice cheerful. I hope the earlier unpleasantness did not spoil your enjoyment. Not at all, Brenda, Sterling boomed, clapping her on the shoulder. You were a true professional. I will not forget this. That letter to Hall is as good as sent. You are too kind, sir. See you on your return voyage, I hope. Absolutely. And I expect you to be working, he said with a wink. They shared another laugh. When the exit door opened, Sterling was the first person to strut off the ship. Brenda turned to her team. All right, let us clean these cabins. Ethan, stop dawdling and get the service carts. Ethan, his face pale but determined, just nodded. Yes, Brenda. In front of 402-B, when the corridor cleared, Alina finally stood up. She took her bag and walked slowly toward the exit, blending in with the last of the disembarking passengers. As she passed through the main lobby, she saw Brenda Miller. Their eyes met. Brenda's face was a mask of pure, unadulterated contempt. The professional smile was gone, replaced by a sneer. Have a good trip, ma'am? She asked, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Alina did not answer. She just held her gaze, her eyes cold and analytical. She held it for 1, 2, 3 long seconds. Brenda's sneer faltered. A flicker of uncertainty passed through her eyes. Who was this woman who could look at her like that after being so completely defeated? Alina said nothing. She just turned and disembarked. The passenger bridge was cool. She entered the terminal, her eyes scanning. She was not looking for the main arrivals hall. She was looking for her contact, a man dressed in an impeccably tailored dark gray Savile Row suit stepped out from behind a pillar. He was tall, thin, and held a small, discreet digital sign that simply read Ramsay, Dr. Ramsay. He asked, his voice a polished, upper-class British accent. "I am," Alina said. "Richard Powell from Lord Bradford Ellsworth's office. He conveys his deep apologies for your journey. The car is waiting at the diplomatic entrance. We will be at headquarters in 10 minutes. "Thank you, Richard. Is the meeting ready?" "Yes, Doctor. The entire executive committee has assembled. They are awaiting your arrival." "Good." As Richard took her bag, Alina looked back through the glass wall toward the ship. She could see Brenda Miller laughing with another staff member at the ship's door. From where she stood, Brenda could not see the Savile Row suit, the diplomatic exit, or the black Bentley Mulsanne waiting on the tarmac. All she saw was the woman in the bright blue tracksuit disappearing into the crowd, and she immediately forgot her. Meanwhile, at passport control, Preston Sterling was having a very different experience when he handed over his passport. A red light flashed on the officer's screen. "Mr. Preston Sterling," said the officer, his voice flat. "Yes, is there a problem?" said Sterling, annoyed. "Sir, I am going to ask you to come this way. You have been flagged for a random secondary security screening." "What? This is an outrage. I am here for a vital meeting. I demand to speak to your supervisor." "Please come with me, sir," the officer said, his hand going to his belt. 2 more uniformed officers appeared. Now Sterling's face turned a shade of purple Alina would have appreciated. "You will hear from my lawyers," he bellowed as he was led not to the arrivals hall, but to a small windowless room deep in the terminal. The trap was set. The corporate headquarters of Azure Ocean Lines was a massive structure of glass and steel designed to resemble a ship's bow. When Dr. Alina Ramsay entered the top floor conference room at 7:03 in the morning, the effect was like a predator entering a cage. The room was silent. The long, polished mahogany table was filled with the most powerful people in the company. Chief Executive Officer Richard Hall, who prided himself on his turnaround strategies. Head of Services Amanda Brooks, who looked like she had not slept. The head of Legal, the head of HR, and the head of Corporate Security. At the head of the table sat the 70-year-old aristocrat Lord Bradford Ellsworth, representing the other half of the company. He was a man of old-world class and looked absolutely furious. He stood up as Alina entered. "Alina," he said, his voice grim. He walked over and took her hands. "My dear, on behalf of this entire company, There are no words. I am horrified, disgusted." Alina gently pulled her hands away. "Save the apologies, Bradford. I am not here for apologies. I am here for remediation." "Richard," she said, her voice cutting through the room. Chief Executive Officer Richard Hall jumped to his feet. "Dr. Ramsay, we. This is an unforgivable failure. A system. This is not a system error, Richard," Alina said, walking to the coffee station and pouring herself a black coffee. "It was not a system that called me sweetie. It was not a system that threatened me. It was not a system that laughed at my humiliation. It was a person. A person you hired, you trained, okay, and whom you allowed to fester in this company. In our company, reflecting a deep-seated culture of privilege and bias." She took a sip of her coffee. The silence in the room was absolute. Everyone was looking at this woman in a bright blue cashmere tracksuit who was now clearly running the show. "So, here is what is going to happen," she said, turning to the table. "First, the crew." Head of Services Amanda Brooks spoke, her voice trembling. "Dr. Ramsay, they are on their way. They were told it was a surprise performance review regarding the handling of a VIP. Lena almost smiled. How appropriate. And Mr. Sterling. The security chief cleared his throat. He is in our custody. He did not cooperate. He is currently shouting about his lawyers in room B. He believes this is a government action. Excellent, Elena said. And the Atlas Project. Bradford cleared his throat. As you suspected, he was attempting a last-minute disruption. He was petitioning to minority shareholders, trying to convince them your offer was an undervaluation. He was planning to present a counteroffer this afternoon, Elena said, her voice lightening. Well, he is going to be a little busy. She sat at the head of the table opposite Bradford. All right, let us bring them in. Amanda, you first. Amanda Brooks nodded, her face ashen. Dr. Ramsey. Before they arrive, I pulled Miss Miller's file. The situation is not good. 17 passenger complaints in the last 3 years. 9 of them specifically alleging biased or discriminatory behavior. All of them were dismissed by her direct supervisor. Dismissed, repeated Elena. It was not a question. They were all against low-status passengers, Amanda whispered. People with discounted tickets, staff, relatives. No one. No one important. I understand. Elena said, her voice dangerously quiet. So the problem is not just Miss Miller. The problem is her manager and his manager. And you, Amanda. You are the head of services. This rot grew on your watch. Amanda Brooks looked like she was going to be sick. We will clean this entire house, Elena said. But first, the person who lit the match. There was a knock on the door. A secretary poked her head in. Miss Brooks, the crew of AOL 101 is here. Send them in, Elena said, her voice flat. The door opened. Brenda Miller, Ethan Cole, and 2 other attendants walked in. Brenda was smiling. She had applied fresh lipstick. She saw the room full of executives, Richard Hall, Lord Ellsworth, and her smile widened. She was here for her praise. This was it, the big promotion. Mr. Hall, Lord Ellsworth, what? What a great honor. She, CHIRPED. Then her eyes scanned the table. She passed the legal team, the HR head, and finally landed on the woman at the head of the table. The woman in the bright blue tracksuit, sipping coffee, staring at her with eyes like polished stone. Brenda Miller's smile did not just fade, it shattered. The blood drained from her face, leaving a sickly, pale gray mask. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. She looked at Elena, then at Richard Hall, then back at Elena. Her mind could not compute what she was seeing. Ethan Cole, standing behind her, remained perfectly still, his face a mask of neutrality. Miss Miller, said Lord Bradford Ellsworth, his voice booming in the quiet room. Good morning. Thank you for joining us. Brenda stammered, her hand going to her throat. Miss Miller, Bradford continued, it seems we have a problem. You see, you have met Dr. Elena Ramsey. Brenda's knees gave way. She grabbed the back of a chair to steady herself. Dr. Elena Ramsey, Elena said, speaking for the first time. Chief Executive Officer of Ramsey Horizon Ventures, the holding company that acquired a 49% controlling stake in transatlantic voyages 18 months ago. I am Miss Miller, for all intents and purposes, your boss. The silence in the conference room was a living thing. It was thick, heavy, and suffocating. Brenda Miller's breath came in short, ragged gasps. She looked wildly between Richard Hall and Lord Ellsworth as if searching for an exit, a trick, a way out. But she was in a tracksuit, she whispered. That was all her brain could offer. A pathetic, desperate defense. She was in a bright blue tracksuit, Elena repeated, her voice devoid of emotion. And you, Miss Miller, were in a uniform. A uniform that represents this company. A company I own. And you used that uniform to threaten, bully, and humiliate a passenger based on the color of her skin and the clothes she was wearing. It was a mistake. The seating arrangement, Brenda cried, tears now streaming down her powdered cheeks. Mr. Sterling, he is a platinum member. He insisted. He said he knew Mr. Hall. Richard Hall flinched. Miss Miller, he said, his voice trembling with rage. You are fired. Effective immediately. Your behavior was not a mistake. It was a malicious, calculated, and racist act of abuse. It violates every policy this company has. It violates federal law. Surrender your credentials. A security guard waiting by the door stepped forward. No, please. Brenda screamed. I have 20 years. My pension. Please. It was him. It was Sterling. You are right. It was Mr. Sterling, Alina said, her voice cutting through the hysteria. And you were his willing accomplice. Your 20 years of service, Miss Miller apparently taught you nothing about human decency. Security. Please escort Miss Miller from the building. I believe her supervisor will be joining her shortly. Amanda, she said, looking at the head of services. Handle it. Amanda Brooks nodded, her face ashen. Yes, Dr. Ramsey. Brenda Miller collapsed into a sobbing, hysterical mess as the security guard took her arm and gently but firmly led her out of the room. Her wails of "it is not fair. It is not fair," echoed down the corridor before the door clicked shut. The room became silent again. Alina turned her attention to Ethan Cole, who stood ramrod straight, staring at the wall. Mr. Cole, Alina said. Itha met her gaze. Yes, ma'am. I received your report. It was excellent. Detailed, honest, and courageous. Ethan exhaled a breath he felt he had been holding for 8 hours. You, Mr. Cole, Alina continued, are what this cruise line should be. You showed integrity under pressure. You were horrified by what you saw, and you did the right thing. Richard, she said to the chief executive officer, Mr. Cole is promoted to senior steward, effective immediately. I want him fast-tracked into the management training program. His honesty is an asset we cannot afford to lose. Ethan's jaw dropped. Ma'am, Dr. Ramsey, thank you. Thank you. You earned it, son, said Lord Ellsworth, giving him a rare smile. Now go get some rest. You have a bright future here. Ethan nodded, dazed, and left the room. His life had irrevocably changed. Now, Alina said, turning to the security chief, let us handle the Sterling problem. Bring him in. A moment later, the door opened and Preston Sterling was ushered in by 2 security guards. He was no longer the smug, arrogant giant of the ship corridor. His suit was crumpled. His hair was messy. His face was a mask of pure rage. What is the meaning of this? He bellowed. I have been held against my will for 2 hours. I missed my meeting. I will end all of your careers. I will sue this entire port. I will sue Azure Ocean Lines. He stopped. His eyes, just like Brenda's, scanned the room and landed on Alina Ramsey. The confusion was instant. What the hell are you doing here? Did they arrest you too? Alina leaned back in her chair. Hello, Mr. Sterling. Welcome to Southampton. Please sit down. I am not sitting. I am leaving. And I am taking every penny this company has. No, you are not, Alina said calmly. You are not doing any of those things. Let me introduce myself. I am Dr. Alina Ramsey, Chief Executive Officer of Ramsey Horizon Ventures. And as of this morning, I am the majority shareholder of the cruise line you threatened to sue, whose passenger you racially harassed and illegally displaced. Sterling's face turned from purple to a ghostly white. He looked at Lord Ellsworth, whom he knew from financial circles. Bradford, what is this? What is she talking about? She is telling the truth, Preston, Ellsworth said, his voice ice cold. You just attacked the owner of the company. A truly spectacularly stupid move, even for you. Sterling was speechless. Here is what is happening, Mr. Sterling, Alina continued, as if reciting a shopping list. 1, Azure Ocean Lines is banning you for life. You will never set foot on one of our ships again. 2, my personal legal team is currently filing a multi-million-dollar lawsuit against you. And Sterling Capital for racial discrimination, public harassment, and conspiracy to defame. 3, the Atlas Project meeting you were so desperate to attend. That was my meeting. Your attempts to interfere with my acquisition are noted and finished. You will not be allowed within 500 feet of the deal. And finally, the part I think you will enjoy the least. Alina picked up her phone. She dialed a speed dial number. The phone rang once and was picked up. An American and powerful voice came through the speakerphone. Lena, did you land? I landed. Jonathan, thank you for taking my call for you. Always. What is up? Sterling's eyes widened. He recognized the voice. Jonathan, Alina said. I am currently in a board meeting with Mr. Preston Sterling of Sterling Capital. The voice on the phone went cold. Sterling, I know him. A loudmouth, why? Well, Jonathan, Mr. Sterling spent the last 8 hours displaying a level of overt public racism that I find financially risky. He is a liability. His behavior is a threat to any brand associated with him. I am pulling all Ramsey Horizon funds from any portfolio that includes him. I thought you, as the chief executive officer of Goldman Sachs, should know. If I were you, I would consider his firm radioactive. There was silence. Sterling was shaking. Jonathan ... Jonathan Kraft. Thank you, Alina, said the Goldman Sachs chief executive officer's voice. I am grateful for the information. We take such matters very, very seriously. Consider it handled. Alina smiled. Thanks, Jonathan. See you in New York. She hung up. Preston Sterling looked at Alina. The man who stood in the corridor and called her sweetie was gone. In his place was a terrified, broken shell. You ... You ruined me, he whispered. No, Mr. Sterling, Alina said, standing up. You ruined yourself. You just invited me to watch. Her presence walked overwhelmingly toward him. You are a relic, Mr. Sterling. You and your kind. You think the world belongs to you. You think you can bully and belittle anyone you decide is lesser? But you are wrong. The world has changed. I changed it. Security, she said, turning her face away from him. Get him out of my conference room. Get him out of my building. Sterling did not scream this time. He was silent as the guards let him out. The man who boarded the ship as a king would return to New York as a pariah. If he could find a ticket. Alina Ramsey stood at the window, watching ships leave the port one after another in the gray Southampton morning. Hard karma had found its place. Now she had a cruise line to fix and $1 billion deal to close. They say karma moves slowly, but sometimes it strikes like lightning. Preston Sterling's firm, Sterling Capital, went bankrupt within 6 months. After the call from Goldman Sachs, every major investor pulled their money, citing the character clause in their contracts. He lost everything. Brenda Miller was never hired by a major cruise line again. Her reputation for racism made her unemployable. She was last seen working at a duty-free kiosk at a regional ferry terminal. And Dr. Alina Ramsey. She successfully completed the Atlas Project acquisition, becoming the most powerful woman in maritime. She initiated a radical cultural overhaul at Azure Ocean Lines with Ethan Cole, the man who chose honesty over fear, leading the new in-service training program. Alina Ramsey proved that the best revenge is not being loud, but being powerful. They tried to send her to the back of the bus, so she bought the bus. What do you think about this story of justice? Have you ever seen someone so arrogant get so completely humbled? Let me know in the comments below what you would have done in her situation. And if you love stories where the bully gets what they deserve, make sure you hit that like button, share this video with your friends, and subscribe to the channel for more true life karma stories every single day.